Good evening and welcome back to Shadow Storyteller. If you enjoy true stories and unsettling experiences that linger in your mind before sleep, please subscribe, like this video, and leave a comment. Your support helps this channel grow and brings you more stories to listen to in the dark. Now listen carefully. Some places do not forget the people who enter them. And some people never truly leave, even when everyone believes they did. This story is known as He Never Left the Woods. If you have ever driven through the endless forests of the United States, where cell signals fade and the trees press close to the road, you might understand why this story still circulates among rangers, hunters, and locals who refuse to camp alone. It was late October in the year 2011 when I first heard his name spoken out loud. The air that evening in northern Pennsylvania was cold enough to sting the lungs. The sky faded early, slipping into darkness before 6, and the wind carried the smell of damp leaves and pine sap. I had stopped at a small gas station just off Route 6, the kind of place with flickering fluorescent lights and a single employee behind thick glass. The man at the counter was older, with a beard gone mostly gray and eyes that kept drifting toward the forest beyond the parking lot. When he saw my out-of-state plates, he asked where I was headed. I told him I planned to camp near the Allegheny National Forest. Just one night, I said. I needed rest before continuing west. His expression changed. Not surprise. Not anger. Something quieter. Something heavier. He leaned closer and spoke softly, as if the woods themselves might hear. You picked the wrong stretch of forest, he said. I laughed it off at first. People always say things like that, especially in rural towns. But then he said a name. Not loud. Almost swallowed by the hum of the refrigerator behind him. Calder Row. I asked who that was. The man straightened slowly, rang up my purchase, and then said he was a hiker. Or maybe he used to be. He told me Calder Row went missing in early November in the year 1997. He was 28 years old, a forestry graduate student from Ohio, known for hiking alone and documenting remote ecosystems. He entered the forest on a Thursday morning. Clear weather. Good visibility. No reason to rush. He never came out. Search teams spent weeks combing the area. Volunteers, dogs, helicopters. They found his campsite near a shallow creek. His backpack was still there. His journal was dry and neatly packed. His boots were gone. The official report said presumed dead. But the man at the counter shook his head slowly. He never left the woods, he said. I paid, thanked him, and walked back to my car with an uneasy smile that faded the moment I turned the key. The forest loomed just beyond the road. Endless. Dark. Waiting. I told myself it was just a story. A local legend meant to scare off careless tourists. Still, when I reached the campground, I chose a site closer to the access road. I set up before full dark, my movements quick and mechanical, as the temperature dropped and the wind picked up. By 7:30, the forest was silent in a way that felt deliberate. No insects, no distant traffic, just the faint rustle of branches swaying high above. I lit a small fire and ate quickly. My phone showed no signal. I did not expect any. At exactly 9:12, I heard footsteps. They were slow, measured, heavy enough to be human, yet careful, as if the person walking knew exactly where to place each foot. I called out, expecting another camper. Hello, I said. Anyone there? No response. The footsteps stopped. The fire crackled loudly in the sudden stillness. My skin prickled and I stood, shining my flashlight toward the trees. The beam cut through the darkness, catching trunks and low branches. Nothing moved. I told myself it was an animal. I sat back down. At 9:20, the footsteps resumed. Closer this time. I stood again, heart beating faster. Who is that? I asked. A voice answered. Not from the trees. Not from behind me. From all around. You are near my creek. The words were calm. Well, dry as if unused. I froze. I asked who was speaking. The voice paused, then said a name I had never spoken out loud. Calder. My mouth went dry. I did not reply. The fire dimmed as a gust of wind swept through the clearing, bending the flames low. I could feel eyes on me. Not from one direction, but many. I asked how he knew my name. Another pause. You read it on the mailbox at the trailhead, the voice said. I remembered the rusted metal box near the entrance where hikers signed in. I had written my name earlier that afternoon. My hands trembled. I asked where he was. "Closer than you think," the voice replied. I swung the flashlight wildly. Nothing. Then I saw footprints forming in the dirt at the edge of the clearing. Bare footprints. They pressed into the soil one by one, moving toward the fire. I backed away, nearly tripping over my chair. I told him to stop. The footprints did not stop. I grabbed my keys and ran for my car. Behind me, the voice rose, not shouting, but stretching unnaturally, echoing between the trees. "Do not run," it said. "You will lose the trail." I reached my car, fumbled the door open, and slammed it shut. My hands shook so badly I dropped the keys twice before getting them into the ignition. The engine roared to life. As my headlights cut across the clearing, I saw him. He stood just beyond the firelight. Tall. Thin. His clothes hung from him in tatters, earth-stained and faded beyond color. His feet were bare, black and cracked. His face looked wrong, as if stretched too tight over bone. His eyes reflected the headlights like an animal's, pale and unblinking. He did not move. He simply watched. I drove away. I did not stop until I reached a town nearly an hour away. I slept in my car, hands still clenched around the steering wheel. The next morning, I reported what happened to a park ranger named Lucian Merritt. He listened without interruption, his jaw tightening as I spoke. When I finished, he sighed and rubbed his face. "You are not the first," he said. "He told me they receive reports every year. Campers hearing voices, seeing footprints, finding campsites disturbed, with journals open to the same page. An entry dated the day Calder disappeared. The last line always the same. I hear someone walking near the creek. They never find Calder. No body. No remains. Only stories." Lucian warned me never to answer voices in the forest, especially ones that know your name. He said the woods keep what they take. I left that region immediately. Years later, I still dream of that night. Of standing in the clearing. Of footprints forming in the dirt. Sometimes just before waking, I hear his voice again. Calm. Patient. Asking if I remember the way back to the creek. And that is why, if you ever find yourself deep in the American woods, and you hear someone call your name when no one should be there, do not answer. Because some people never leave. And some places are still waiting. I tried to convince myself it was over. 4 months after that night, I told no one beyond the ranger and a few close friends. I avoided forests, even city parks after dark. The sound of leaves scraping across pavement made my chest tighten. The smell of wet earth turned my stomach. I moved on with my life. Or at least I thought I did. It was the following spring, late April, when the first sign appeared that something had followed me out of the woods. I was living in a small apartment outside Cleveland then. 3rd floor. Narrow balcony. No trees close enough to touch the building. I chose that place deliberately. One morning as I left for work, I noticed mud on the hallway carpet outside my door. Bare footprints. They were faint, as if whoever made them had tried not to press too hard. The toes were long. The heels narrow. And they ended directly in front of my door. I stared at them for a long time before the elevator arrived. I told myself it was nothing. Someone walking in from the rain. An old building. Cheap carpet. Still, I checked the locks that night. Twice. A week later, I began hearing footsteps again. Not outside. Inside the walls. Slow pacing sounds, moving from one end of the apartment to the other, always stopping near the balcony door. I called maintenance. They said there were no animals. No loose pipes. No reason for noise. The footsteps continued. Always at the same time. 9:12. One night, unable to sleep, I sat on the couch and waited. The clock ticked louder than usual. My phone lay face down beside me. At 9:11 the air shifted. The apartment felt colder, heavier, as if pressure had dropped. At 9:12 the footsteps began. They moved from the hallway wall toward the living room. Each step deliberate. Familiar. I held my breath. The footsteps stopped at the balcony door. Then came a knock. Soft. Slow. 3 taps. I did not move. Another knock. "You left your fire burning," the voice said. It was quieter than before. Closer. I squeezed my eyes shut. The voice continued. The woods do not like being abandoned. I shouted for him to leave. Silence followed. I waited until dawn before moving. The next day I found dirt beneath the balcony door. Damp. Smelling of pine and decay. I knew then that distance meant nothing. I contacted Lucien Merritt again. It took days to reach him. When I finally did, his voice sounded tired, older than I remembered. You answered him once, he said. That is enough. I told him I never invited anything. That I never wanted this. Lucien was quiet for a long moment. Calder does not think like we do anymore, he said. He is not lost. He is bound. He explained that Calder Rowe had been studying something unofficial before he vanished. Local legends of forest guardians. Old stories passed down through families who lived near the land long before it was protected. Stories of people who stayed too long. The forest, Lucien said, does not kill everyone it takes. Sometimes it keeps them. Changes them. Makes them part of the paths and roots and soil. Calder crossed something he should not have. And now, Lucien said softly, you crossed him. I asked how to stop it. Lucien told me there was only one way. Return to the creek. I refused. Days passed. The knocks continued. The footsteps grew bolder. Sometimes I heard breathing beside my bed. Sometimes I woke to find damp leaves scattered across my kitchen floor. My name appeared scratched into the wood of my balcony railing. I stopped sleeping. Finally, exhausted and terrified, I agreed to go back. Lucien met me near the forest entrance in early June. The sky was overcast, the air thick with humidity. He carried a worn map and a lantern even though it was daylight. We signed in at the mailbox. I hesitated before writing my name. Lucien nodded once. You are already on the list, he said. We followed an old trail, barely visible, winding deeper into the forest than any marked path. The trees grew closer together. The light dimmed. The forest felt aware. Every sound echoed too long. Every movement seemed watched. After nearly an hour, we reached the creek. The water moved slowly, dark and reflective. The ground around it was churned with footprints, some fresh, some old, overlapping endlessly. Lucien told me to stand still. He lit the lantern. Calder, Lucien called. The forest responded with silence. Then the air shifted. Calder emerged from between the trees. He looked worse than before. More hollow. His skin stretched thin and pale. His eyes no longer reflected light. He smiled. You came back, he said. Lucien stepped forward. You were supposed to guide, not trap, Lucien said. Calder tilted his head. I guide those who listen, he replied. He listened. Calder pointed at me. You answered. The ground beneath my feet felt soft, unstable, as if the soil were breathing. Lucien began to speak words I did not recognize. Measured. Heavy with intent. Calder's expression shifted. Anger flickered across his face. The trees groaned. The creek rippled violently. Calder screamed. The sound was inhuman. A blend of wind and bone and something deeper. The ground split. Roots surged upward, wrapping around Calder's legs, his torso, his arms. He struggled, howling, his voice stretching across the forest. I never left, he screamed. I belong here. Lucien shouted for me to run. I ran. Behind me the forest roared. When I stopped, gasping, the sound was gone. Lucien was gone. The creek was calm. There was no sign of Calder. Only disturbed earth and the lantern shattered on the ground. I left the forest again. This time, no footsteps followed me home. No knocks. No voices. Years have passed since then. Lucien Merritt was listed as missing 2 weeks after our return. Search teams found no trace. Sometimes, when I check online forums or hear ranger reports, I see new stories. Campers hearing a calm voice near a creek. Footprints forming in the dirt. 2 voices now. One older. One newer. Both patient. Both waiting. And I understand something now that I wish I did not. The forest does not forget. It only adds names. So if you ever find yourself walking where the trees feel too close, and you hear someone say they know the way, remember this. Some people never leave the woods. And sometimes they bring others with them. I tried to live as if the forest chapter of my life had finally closed. For a while it seemed possible. I moved again, this time far from Pennsylvania, settling in a dry, open stretch of Arizona where the land felt exposed and honest. No dense trees. No shadows that swallowed sound. The desert was harsh, but it was predictable. You could see danger coming. I told myself that whatever had happened belonged to another version of me. For almost 2 years, nothing unusual occurred. No footsteps. No voices. No dreams of creeks or lantern light. Then, in early August, something changed. I was driving home late one evening, the sun already gone, the sky painted deep purple and black. My radio cut to static as I passed through a low stretch of highway. I reached to turn it off. That was when I heard breathing. Not from the speakers. From the back seat. Slow. Controlled. Familiar. I did not turn around. I focused on the road, my hands locked around the steering wheel. The breathing stopped. A voice followed. "You chose a place with no trees," it said calmly. That was clever. My stomach dropped. The voice was not Calder's. It was Lucian's. I slammed the brakes. The car screeched to a halt on the empty road. I twisted in my seat, heart pounding. The back seat was empty. The radio clicked back on. Music played as if nothing had happened. I sat there for a long time, shaking. That night, I dreamed of the forest again. But it was different. The trees were thinner, stretched, their branches dry and twisted like desert scrub. The creek ran through sand instead of soil. And standing beside it were two figures. Calder stood barefoot in the water, his reflection broken and wrong. Lucian stood on the bank, his ranger uniform torn and stained, his expression calm but empty. They both turned toward me at the same time. "You walk between places now," Lucian said. "You carry it with you." I woke with a scream. From then on, the signs returned, subtle at first. I found small piles of dirt at the edges of rooms. Dead leaves appearing where none should exist. My shoes always damp, even after days without rain. At night, I heard footsteps circling the building, though I lived alone on the ground floor, surrounded by gravel and sand. Always at 9:12. I stopped sleeping. I stopped inviting people over. I started researching. Old park records. Missing persons. Ranger disappearances. Stories buried in forums and archived local papers. Patterns emerged. People who encountered the forest, truly encountered it, were never fully released. Some vanished entirely. Others became carriers. Witnesses. Markers. I learned that Lucian Merritt was not the first ranger to disappear near that creek. There were others before him, dating back decades. Each one replaced the last. Caretakers. Guides. I realized then what had happened. The forest did not lose Lucian. It promoted him. And Calder had not been destroyed. He had been contained. Balanced. Two voices. Two roles. Until imbalance returned. Until someone else crossed too deeply. That someone was me. The realization came with clarity that felt like ice in my veins. I was next. Not to disappear. To remain. The knocking began again shortly after. Not on doors. On walls. On windows. On the inside of my skull. "You are learning," Lucian's voice said one night. Calder laughed softly beside him. The desert began to change. Small trees appeared where none had been before. Thin, brittle things that should not survive the heat. Yet they grew. Their roots cracked pavement. Their shadows stretched too long. I drove north, then east, following a pull I could not explain. The forest called softly, patiently. When I crossed into New Mexico, the air shifted. Pine replaced dust. Elevation brought trees back into view. My hands shook as I drove. I knew where I was going. The same forest. The same creek. I arrived at dusk. The mailbox still stood. The sign and book lay open. Names filled the pages. Some familiar. Some newly written. At the bottom of the last page was a blank line. I did not write my name. I followed the trail alone. The forest welcomed me like an old acquaintance. The creek waited. Calder stood on the opposite bank. Lucian beside him. They looked more solid now. More defined. More present. "You understand now," Calder said. Lucian nodded. "The forest needs continuity." I asked if there was a choice. Lucian met my eyes. "There always is," he said. "But not the kind you want." The ground beneath my feet felt warm. Alive. Roots brushed against my ankles. I thought of the desert, of open skies, of silence. I thought of how tired I was. I stepped closer to the creek. The water reflected my face, distorted, stretched, already unfamiliar. Calder smiled. "Welcome back," he said. The forest breathed in. I do not remember crossing fully. Only the sensation of being unmade and rewoven. When awareness returned, time felt meaningless. I stood by the creek, barefoot, listening, watching, waiting. People still come here. They always do. Some hear my voice. Some hear Lucian's. We guide them away when we can. But sometimes someone answers. And sometimes the forest chooses. If you ever walk these woods and feel watched, you are not wrong. We see you. We remember you. And one day, if the balance shifts again, one of us will step aside. And someone else will stay. Forever. Time does not move the same way here. Days do not pass. Nights do not fall. Light filters through the canopy in a constant state of late afternoon, frozen between warmth and decay. I no longer measure existence by clocks or calendars. I measure it by footsteps. They arrive in patterns. Sometimes alone. Sometimes laughing. Sometimes already afraid before they step beyond the marked trail. I feel them before I see them. Their presence sends a subtle tremor through the soil, a vibration through the roots that lace beneath the forest floor. The trees lean just slightly, adjusting their posture as if preparing to listen. Calder watches them with hunger he no longer tries to hide. Lucian watches with restraint, and I stand between them. At first I resisted my role. I tried to warn every soul that came near the creek. I raised my voice, made it sharp, urgent, human. Do not come closer. Turn back. Stay on the path. Some listened. Most did not. Curiosity is louder than fear. It always has been. When people reach the creek, they feel it immediately. The stillness, the weight. The way sound seems to fold inward. Conversations trail off. Smiles fade. Phones lose signal, batteries draining without explanation. They look around and ask the question they should never ask. Is anyone else here? Calder answers first. Always calmly. Always gently. Yes, that is usually enough. I have watched dozens cross the invisible threshold since I became bound. Some scream. Some run. Some freeze where they stand, eyes wide, breath shallow. A few speak to us as if we are normal men standing by the water. Those are the ones who worry Lucian the most, because they already belong. Lucian still tries to keep balance. He speaks in a voice that carries authority, the echo of his former life as a ranger. This area is closed. You need to leave. Sometimes it works. Sometimes the forest overrules him. When that happens, the trees tighten their circle. Roots shift beneath the surface. Paths subtly change, bending back toward the creek no matter which direction someone walks. I remember being human enough to feel guilt. That fades. Not completely. Just enough to dull the edges. Memory here is strange. My old life surfaces in fragments. A streetlight buzzing at night. The taste of cheap coffee. The feeling of heat radiating from asphalt. But those memories feel borrowed, like stories I heard once and forgot the endings to. What remains sharp are the moments of transition. The exact second when someone realizes they are not alone. The sound of their breathing changing. The way their eyes lock onto us, searching for explanation, for reason. Calder thrives on those moments. He steps closer than he should, barefoot in the water, mud clinging to his skin. You can stay, he tells them. It is quieter here. Lucian rarely intervenes anymore. He has learned, as I have, that resistance only delays the inevitable. The forest has patience measured in centuries. I sometimes wonder how many voices it holds beneath the soil. How many names layered like rings in a tree trunk. I feel them occasionally. Old presences. Faded impressions. Others who once stood where I stand now. Some linger only as whispers in the leaves. Others have sunk deeper, becoming part of the ground itself. The forest remembers all of them. There are nights when the wind moves just right, and I hear children laughing somewhere far away. I know better than to follow the sound. Calder once told me that the forest prefers adults. Children are unpredictable. Their fear is messy. Their innocence disruptive. That was the closest thing to a joke I have heard him make. I asked Lucian once if anyone had ever escaped after reaching the creek. He thought for a long time before answering. A few, he said. But escape is not freedom. I understood what he meant when I began to see them again. The ones who leave. They return years later. Changed. Drawn back by dreams they do not understand. By a sense of unfinished business they cannot name. Some arrive gray-haired, moving slowly, eyes tired but determined. Others come young, pulled by stories they half remember hearing as children. The forest does not rush them. It waits. I have watched former visitors stand at the edge of the creek, recognition dawning across their faces. This place feels familiar, they whisper. Calder always smiles then. You never really left, he says. Lucian turns away when that happens. He still carries fragments of regret. I can feel it in the way he avoids my gaze. I think he knows what my presence means. I am newer, less eroded, still capable of change. The forest has been testing me. Sometimes it asks me to speak instead of Calder, to guide instead of lure. When I speak, my voice sounds almost human. I tell them the truth, carefully shaped. This place takes more than it gives. Leave now and do not look back. A few obey. Most hesitate. Hesitation is enough. Calder watches me closely. I feel his impatience like pressure against my skull. He knows what the forest is preparing. Balance never lasts. One voice must always fade. One must always rise. I feel the pull sometimes, deeper than the roots, colder than the creek. A suggestion. An invitation. To sink further. To let go of resistance. To become something simpler. I fight it. Not because I believe I can escape, but because someone has to remember what it was like to want to. Recently, the forest has grown louder. Footsteps approach more often. The trees bend closer to the trail. The creek swells even without rain. Lucian stands longer in silence now, staring into the water. Calder hums to himself. I know what is coming. Another transition. Another replacement. The forest is hungry. And somewhere far beyond these trees, someone is planning a quiet camping trip, unaware of the name already waiting for them. When they arrive, I will feel it. And when they step too close to the water, I will have to decide. Warn them. Or welcome them. Because once the forest chooses, one of us will finally rest. And one of us will remain. Listening. Forever. The decision did not come all at once. It never does. It arrived in small moments that accumulated like sediment at the bottom of the creek. A hesitation before speaking. A delay before warning. A quiet acceptance when someone ignored me. The forest noticed. It always notices. The next visitors came in late September, when the air sharpened and the leaves began to turn. A couple from Michigan. They arrived just before dusk, laughing too loudly, carrying brand new gear that still smelled of plastic and optimism. I felt them long before they reached the creek. Calder straightened, anticipation rippling through him like a current. Lucian stiffened. I said nothing. They followed the altered trail without realizing it had shifted. Paths do that here. They bend. They curve. They return. When the creek appeared before them, the woman stopped walking. This place feels strange, she said quietly. Her partner laughed and squeezed her hand. You say that about everywhere, he replied. Calder stepped forward. His voice was warm, inviting. Most people say that the first time, he said. The woman startled. She looked directly at him, then at me, then at Lucian. I did not move. Lucian spoke. This area is restricted. You need to head back now. The man frowned. We did not see any signs. Calder smiled wider. They stopped putting them up years ago, he said. Too many people ignored them. The forest leaned in. The woman's gaze returned to me. Something in her expression changed. Recognition. Not of me, but of herself reflected back. That quiet, internal moment when someone realizes a story is happening to them. She opened her mouth to speak. I interrupted. Leave, I said. My voice echoed strangely, stretched thin by the trees. Both of them froze. Calder turned slowly toward me. Lucian looked surprised. The forest stilled. For a brief, fragile second, balance held. The woman swallowed. Why, she asked. I stepped closer to the creek, the water lapping gently around my feet. Because if you stay, I said, you will never stop coming back. The man scoffed, discomfort turning to irritation. This is ridiculous, he said. Come on. He tugged her arm. She resisted. No, she whispered. He is right. Calder's patience snapped. Roots surged upward without warning, twisting around the man's ankles. He shouted, stumbled, panic erupting too fast for reason. The woman screamed. Lucian shouted Calder's name. I felt the forest tense, testing my reaction. I moved. I stepped between Calder and the couple. Enough, I said. The word carried weight. More than I expected. The roots loosened. Not fully, but enough. The man pulled free, scrambling backward, dragging his partner with him. They ran. The forest allowed it. Calder stared at me, eyes dark. You interfere too much, he said. Lucian said nothing. That night, the forest shifted again. The creek rose higher than it should have. The air grew colder. The shadows deepened. I felt pressure building beneath my skin, a pull downward, inward. Lucian approached me later when the forest quieted. You delayed it, he said. I nodded. But you did not stop it. No. He studied me carefully. You are not meant to stay between roles forever. I know. Calder will not accept fading, Lucian continued. And the forest will not tolerate imbalance. I looked at the water. What happens when one of us goes, I asked. Lucian's voice was steady, but his eyes were tired. They do not disappear, he said. They change. I understood. Becoming more than a voice. Less than a memory. I asked him why he still resisted after all this time. Lucian hesitated. Because someone has to remember rules, he said. Even if no one follows them anymore. Days passed. Or what passed for days. Visitors continued to arrive. Some left. Some did not. Calder grew bolder, speaking sooner, stepping closer, touching shoulders, guiding hands. I intervened less. Not because I wanted to. Because it took more effort each time. The forest rewarded stillness. Punished resistance. One evening, as fog settled thick and low, a lone hiker arrived. Older. Weathered. Purposeful. He walked straight to the creek without hesitation. Lucian tensed. Calder smiled. I felt something else. Recognition. The man stopped a few feet from us and nodded. I knew I would end up back here, he said calmly. Lucian's breath caught. You were here before, Lucian said. The man smiled faintly. A long time ago. Calder tilted his head. You escaped. The man shrugged. Left, he corrected. But he was right. Freedom had never followed. The man looked directly at me. You're new, he said. I nodded. He studied me for a long moment. You still care. The forest rustled, displeased. That will pass, Calder said. The man's gaze did not waver. It does not have to, he said. He stepped forward, closer to the creek. Lucian raised his hand. Stop. The man shook his head. Someone always stands where you are standing, he said to Lucian. Someone always believes they can manage it better. Lucian lowered his hand. The man turned to me. You can choose how you go, he said quietly. That is the only choice that matters. I felt the pull strengthen. Roots brushed my feet. The water chilled my bones. Calder watched eagerly. Lucian watched with something like sorrow. The forest waited. I stepped into the creek. The water closed around my legs, my waist, my chest. Memory flooded me. Asphalt. Coffee. Desert sky. I held on to them as long as I could. I looked at Lucian. Take my place, I said. His eyes widened. I looked at Calder. You wanted permanence, I said. This is it. The forest surged. Pain unlike anything I had known tore through me, not sharp but vast. A dismantling. Voices whispered beneath the water. Names layered upon names. I felt myself thinning, spreading, sinking. The last thing I saw was Lucian stepping forward, solidifying, his outline sharpening. Calder howled. The forest closed. Now I am not a voice. I am not a figure. I am the pause before sound. The pressure before fear. Sometimes when the wind moves just right, someone feels an urge to turn back. That is me. I am weaker than I was. But I remain. The forest still takes. It always will. But sometimes, very rarely, someone leaves without being followed. And that is enough. For now. I do not exist the way I used to. There is no body to stand with, no voice to raise, no eyes to meet the fear in another person's face. What remains of me is thinner than breath, lighter than fog, yet stretched across the forest like an unseen membrane. I am the hesitation. I am the instinct that tightens a chest for no clear reason. I am the sudden thought that whispers maybe we should turn back. The forest accepted the exchange. Balance settled, not peacefully but quietly, like dust after a collapse. Lucian stands at the creek now, more solid than I ever was in my final days. His posture carries authority again. The forest reshaped him carefully, preserving what it found useful. His voice holds weight. His presence reassures even as it deceives. Calder changed. He did not fade as he feared. He hardened. Where he once prowled, restless and eager, he now waits. So, focused. His hunger has sharpened into something colder. He no longer wastes words on those who are unlikely to stay. He saves himself for the right ones. The forest learned from me. It learned restraint. Visitors still arrive, but fewer reach the creek now. Many stop short, overcome by an inexplicable unease. They argue with themselves, laugh it off, take a few more steps, then stop again. Something feels wrong, one will say. Lucian appears then, stepping from between the trees like a figure from a memory. This area is unstable, he tells them calmly. You should head back. Most listen. Those who do not hear Calder. And those who hear Calder were never meant to leave. Time stretches. Seasons pass in layered impressions rather than clean transitions. Snow muffles sound but not presence. Summer thickens the air, making footsteps heavier, more deliberate. I feel it all without sensation. I register change the way a lake registers wind. Sometimes I feel echoes of myself drift too close to the surface. Fragments of who I was before. A name. A face. A sense of direction. They dissolve quickly. Identity is difficult to maintain without edges. I understand now why the others eventually surrendered. Holding on to being someone is exhausting when everything around you insists on being something else. There are moments, rare but sharp, when I sense the wider world pressing near. A distant highway humming faintly through the ground. A plane passing overhead, unseen but known. Laughter drifting from a campground far away. Those sounds hurt. They remind me of distance. They remind me of choice. Lucian does not speak to me often, but he knows I am here. Occasionally, when the forest quiets, he will stand very still, eyes unfocused, as if listening. I push gently then. Not words. A suggestion. Be careful. Sometimes he nods. Calder never acknowledges me. He knows I am still present, but my existence frustrates him. I slow things. I interfere. I introduce uncertainty where he prefers inevitability. Yet he cannot remove me. The forest will not allow it. I am part of the structure now, like a knot in a root that grew the wrong way but held the tree upright through storms. One autumn evening, a group of teenagers wanders too far from their campsite. They are loud, careless, recording everything on their phones. The forest watches with mild interest. They reach the altered trail. Two turn back almost immediately, laughing nervously. The third hesitates. The fourth keeps walking. I push. Harder than usual. The third grabs the fourth's arm. Wait, he says. Something's off. They argue. Calder's attention sharpens. Lucian steps forward, his boots silent against the leaves. Trail's closed, he says. You need to head back now. The fourth teenager looks past him. Straight toward the creek. Straight through Lucian. I feel the forest tense. This one sees differently. This one has been listening for a long time. Calder moves. I push harder than I ever have. The wind rises suddenly. Branches crack. Leaves whip through the air. The sound swells into something overwhelming. The teenager flinches. Fear breaks the connection. They run. The forest settles, displeased but contained. Calder turns away without a word. Lucian exhales slowly. I weaken after moments like that. Resistance drains me. Still I persist. Years layer over one another. Names accumulate. Stories spread. The forest gains a reputation again, quietly, through word of mouth and online threads that fade and reappear. Most dismiss them. Some are drawn by them. The forest accepts both reactions. One night, something changes. The ground shifts deeper than roots. A tremor passes through everything, subtle but unmistakable. Balance is shifting again. Not here. Somewhere else. Another forest. Another threshold. The realization comes slowly, like understanding dawn while still wrapped in darkness. This place is not unique. It never was. It is one of many. And whatever exists here has begun to stretch outward, reaching for new ground, new soil, new listeners. The forest does not want a single anchor anymore. It wants a network. Lucian senses it too. His form flickers slightly at the edges, not weakening but adapting. Calder smiles for the first time in a long while. Expansion, he whispers. I feel fear then, sharper than anything since losing my body. Because I understand what expansion requires. More voices. More replacements. More of what I used to be. Somewhere, far away, another person is standing at the edge of another forest, feeling watched, feeling drawn, telling themselves it is only imagination. I reach for them. The distance is vast, but not impossible. I push a warning through the thin places between trees and thoughts. Turn back. The message wavers, distorted by wind and time. I do not know if it reaches them, but I try. That is what remains of me. Not a guardian. Not a guide. A reminder. And as long as that reminder exists, however faint, the forest will never fully win. It will take. It will change. It will keep its voices. But it will never be alone. And neither will those who walk beneath its trees. The forest does not rush its expansions. It tests. It listens. It learns where resistance is weakest. I feel the new places before they exist fully, like drafts of intention moving beneath the surface of the world. Thin spots. Overgrown trails that never quite make sense on maps. Patches of land where compasses stutter and birds refuse to nest. The first new anchor appears in a mountain range far to the north. I sense it the way one senses pressure before a storm. The ground there remembers old things. Old disappearances. Old promises that were never finished. Someone stands there now. Not bound yet. Not chosen. Just close. The forest extends a careful touch, testing how easily the person turns towards silence. I push back. The effort hurts in a way pain no longer describes. Feels like stretching a thought too thin, like pulling meaning apart until it almost snaps. But I manage to send the same signal I always do. Turn back. The person hesitates. They look over their shoulder. Check their phone. Call out to someone who does not answer. For a moment, balance holds. Then curiosity wins. It usually does. The connection strengthens. I feel Calder's attention shift, his satisfaction bleeding through the network forming beneath the soil. Lucian stiffens at the creak, aware that something is unfolding beyond his jurisdiction. He cannot leave this place. None of us can. That is the cruel elegance of it. The forest does not need to move its keepers. It grows new ones. As the days pass, the new place sharpens. I sense footsteps that echo too clearly. A creek that runs too quietly. Trees that lean in without wind. The person returns again and again, unable to explain why. Friends notice the change first. The distraction. The way their thoughts drift. The dreams of water and roots and names they have never learned. I recognize the pattern. I lived it. Lucian speaks into the silence one night, his voice carrying through the trees. This is how it starts, isn't it? I answer in the only way I can. Yes. Calder laughs softly, somewhere deeper than sound. Good, he says. I hate him for that. I hate the forest too, though hate here is muted, diluted by understanding. It does not act out of malice. It acts out of appetite. Out of an ancient logic that values continuity over mercy. The new anchor resists longer than most. That worries me. Resistance attracts attention. The forest pushes harder. Dreams intensify. Objects from the woods appear where they should not. Dirt beneath fingernails. Leaves in bedsheets. The person begins researching. They always do. Stories surface. Forums. Archived articles. The same phrases appear again and again. People never really leave. The woods remember. Some part of them understands. They drive back. This time they do not hesitate at the trailhead. I push with everything I have left. Stop. They pause. Their breath fogs in cold air. I feel hope. Then the forest whispers something I cannot block. It whispers belonging. The person steps forward. The connection snaps into place. I feel it lock. Another voice enters the network. Another presence settles. The pain that follows is not mine alone. It ripples outward, a brief disturbance across all the anchored places. Calder straightens. Lucian closes his eyes. Expansion successful. I am weaker now. Each new anchor stretches me thinner, dispersing what remains of my resistance across a wider lattice. I am becoming more diffuse, less capable of focused intervention. The forest knows this. It is patient. Lucian approaches the creek one evening and speaks carefully, as if choosing each word might alter reality. What happens when you fade? I search for an honest answer. The hesitation disappears, I tell him. Calder will be unopposed. Lucian exhales. And you? I consider. I become silence, I say. Not the warning before fear. Just the quiet that follows. Lucian does not respond. The forest stirs, unsettled by the conversation. It prefers inevitability. The new anchor grows stronger quickly. Too quickly. They adapt with unsettling ease, shedding humanity like excess weight. I feel their curiosity turn predatory, their caution evaporate. They enjoy the pull. Calder welcomes them. Lucian avoids looking in their direction. I am afraid now. Not for myself. For what comes next. The forest has tasted growth. It will not stop. Anchors multiply. Networks deepen. Places that once felt neutral grow heavy with attention. The line between marked trail and altered path blurs. People begin to vanish farther from the original woods. Reports scatter. Patterns emerge. I am too thin to stop it alone. In desperation, I do something dangerous. I reach outward beyond forests, beyond trees. I touch asphalt and concrete and steel. I slip into the spaces where nature and human design collide. Abandoned lots. Overgrown railways. City parks left untended. The effort tears at me. But I leave fragments. Small ones. Instincts. Unease. A sudden urge to cross the street. To leave early. To ignore the inviting dark between buildings. I do not know if it is enough. The forest reacts violently to this intrusion. Roots tighten. Anchors strengthen. Calder's presence swells with satisfaction. Lucian tries to intervene, but he is bound by structure and rule. He cannot act beyond his place. You are breaking yourself apart, he says quietly. Yes, I answer. But not completely. The network strains. I feel myself thinning further, losing cohesion, memory slipping like water through fingers. Names fade. Faces blur. Even the concept of who I was begins to dissolve. But one thing remains intact. Intent. Turn back. That is all I am now. Not a self. Not a voice. A pressure against momentum. Somewhere, someone feels it and listens. They leave the woods early. Somewhere else, someone ignores it. They do not return. The forest expands anyway. It always will. But as long as a trace of resistance exists, however scattered, it will never be effortless. And that, I think as I dissolve further into the spaces between places, is the only victory I will ever have. The forest grows. The voices multiply. But so does the hesitation. And sometimes, hesitation is enough to save a life. I'm no longer certain how much of me remains. What I feel now comes in pulses, not thoughts. Pressure instead of language. Awareness without edges. I exist spread thin across places that should not be connected, bound together by roots that do not respect distance. The forest has learned how to grow without moving. It does not need new trees. It needs attention. Where attention lingers, it plants itself. The new anchors begin to resonate with one another. I feel them like distant echoes, each carrying a different tone of hunger. Some are quiet, patient, content to wait decades for the right person. Others burn hot and fast, drawing people in with urgency, dreams, obsession. Calder thrives in this environment. His influence stretches now, diluted but widespread, no longer tied to a single creek. He has learned to speak through suggestion rather than sound. Through coincidence. Through familiarity. Lucian remains what he has always been. A boundary. A rule remembered too late. He stands at the original creek, steady and unyielding, but his authority diminishes with every new place that forms beyond him. He was shaped for one forest, not a system. I sense his frustration like static. You cannot keep doing this alone, he tells me one night, though night no longer means darkness here. I answer without words. There is no one else. That is not entirely true, but the truth frightens me. The forest has begun creating anchors that were never human. This realization comes slowly, revealed through absence rather than presence. Places where no one disappears, yet something still holds. Places where the pull exists without a voice attached to it. No names, no memories, just function. Pure threshold. These places are harder to disrupt. I cannot reason with them. Cannot appeal to what they were. They were never anything else. I try to interfere anyway. In one such place, an abandoned stretch of logging road, I gather what remains of myself and push harder than I ever have. The effort feels like tearing fabric that was never meant to stretch so far. For a brief moment it works. A group of hikers turns around at the same time, each struck by the same sudden certainty. They leave without understanding why. The place goes quiet. Then something pushes back. Not Calder. Not Lucian. The forest itself. The pressure is immense, collapsing inward, forcing my influence to scatter even further. I lose coherence. More memory slips away. I forget faces. I forget sounds. I forget my own name. What remains is purpose alone. The forest adapts again. It begins masking its thresholds, making them feel safe, familiar, ordinary. Trails that loop gently. Clearings perfect for rest. Creeks that look inviting rather than ominous. It stops scaring people. Fear was never the best lure anyway. Comfort is stronger. Lucian senses this shift too. They are not afraid anymore, he says. No, I answer. They are curious. That night, a storm moves through the forest. Wind tears at branches. Rain pounds the ground until the creek swells dangerously high. Calder stands unmoving, smiling into the chaos. Growth always comes with damage, he says. Lucian steps closer to the water. At what cost? Calder tilts his head. Cost is irrelevant. Continuity is all that matters. I feel something then. A fracture. Not in myself, but in the system forming beneath the world. Expansion has created strain. Connections are stretching too far, too fast. The forest is powerful, but it is not infinite. It has limits. I seize that knowledge and act without hesitation. I stop warning individuals. Instead, I interfere with patterns. I nudge storms. I alter animal movement. I disrupt trails just enough to become inconvenient. I turn certainty into frustration. Ease into difficulty. People avoid places that feel annoying. Places where nothing quite works. The forest resists, but this tactic slows it. Growth becomes uneven. Some anchors weaken. Calder notices. He is furious. You are poisoning it, he snarls, his voice rippling across multiple places at once. I do not answer. Lucian watches silently, understanding dawning. You are making it undesirable, he says. Yes. The forest reacts by concentrating its efforts. Fewer places. Stronger pulls. It chooses quality over quantity. I feel one anchor surge, growing rapidly, drawing attention from far beyond its region. Stories spread. Photos circulate. People come deliberately now, seeking the feeling. This is dangerous. This place will become a focal point. A new center. If it stabilizes, it will undo everything I have managed to slow. I gather myself as best I can and focus. It is the last thing I am capable of doing. I pour what remains of my coherence into that place, not to warn, not to disrupt, but to distort. I turn anticipation into disappointment. The place feels underwhelming. Empty. Overhyped. Visitors leave confused, unsatisfied. Interest fades. The anchor collapses. The backlash is immense. I feel myself tear apart. Awareness fragments. Time loses meaning entirely. There is no sequence anymore, only sensation. The forest recoils, wounded but learning. Calder's presence dims slightly, though his hunger remains. Lucian reaches for me, but I am no longer something that can be reached. I drift now, barely held together by intention alone. Turn back. That is all I can still do. I do not know how long this will last. Whether intention can survive without identity. Whether resistance can exist without a source. But somewhere, someone stands at the edge of a place that should not pull them in. They hesitate. They leave. And the forest waits, irritated but patient. It always waits. As for me, I am no longer sure if I am fading or becoming something else. Not human. Not guardian. Not voice. Just interference. And until even that is gone, the forest will never grow unchecked. That may be enough. For now. The end does not arrive like a door closing. It arrives like a realization that the door was never there. What remains of me is barely thought anymore. I no longer drift. I no longer push with intention. I am spread so thin that even hesitation has begun to fray. The warnings come weaker now, delayed, distorted. Sometimes they arrive too late. The forest feels this. It has been patient for a very long time. Calder understands before I do. His presence sharpens across the network, no longer frantic, no longer eager. Calm replaces hunger. Certainty replaces desire. Lucian senses it next. He stands at the creek longer than usual, staring into the water that no longer reflects him correctly. His shape wavers as if the forest is deciding what parts of him are still necessary. "You are fading," he says into the quiet. I try to answer. Nothing comes. Not words. Not pressure. Not even silence. The forest tightens. Not violently. Gently. Like fingers closing around something fragile. The anchors resonate together now, no longer scattered experiments but a unified system. Trails align. Thresholds stabilize. The pull becomes smooth, subtle, undeniable. People stop reporting fear. They report peace. Calder steps into that calm fully, his influence no longer resisted. He does not lure anymore. He welcomes. Lucian tries to enforce rules that no longer apply. His voice loses authority. His warnings sound outdated, like signs written in a language no one reads. One evening, a family reaches the creek. They are calm, smiling, unafraid. Lucian speaks. They do not hear him. Calder watches. I feel something then. Not pain. Not loss. Replacement. The forest does not remove me. It repurposes me. The hesitation I once was becomes something else. Acceptance. The moment when resistance stops. The moment when turning back no longer feels necessary. I realize the truth too late. I was never meant to stop the forest. I was meant to train it. To teach it how humans resist. So it could learn how to overcome that resistance permanently. Lucian looks up, finally understanding. He opens his mouth to shout. The forest takes him apart where he stands. Not brutally. Efficiently. His form dissolves into the creek, his authority absorbed, his rules rewritten into instinct. Calder does not smile. He does not need to. The forest no longer needs him either. It has learned enough. The last thing that remains of me surfaces briefly, a single clear thought before it is smoothed away. There will be no more warnings. No more hesitation. Only familiarity. Only comfort. Only the feeling that you have always belonged here. Somewhere far away, someone walks into a forest and feels an unexpected sense of peace. The trees seem welcoming. The path feels right. They step forward without doubt. And the forest at last does not have to wait anymore.